Welcome to the 2020-21 Booster Club training. First, we want to thank you for the time and you volunteering to support a student group in Garland ISD. The purpose of this training is to help provide you supports and resources in your role with a GISD affiliated booster club. In order to operate for this school year, you will need to complete this training entirely, electronically initial and sign that you understand the GISD Booster Club requirements, which will be provided with the link at the end, and submit the required information noted at the end of this presentation in the GISD Booster Club guidelines. This training is provided each August of every school year, and again, this email provided here, boosterclub@garlandisd.net, is a resource for you to send the required information to, along to send questions. This email will be provided at the end of the presentation again. What is a booster club? A booster club is any support organization formed by parents, interested community members, fundraising entity, or patrons as a means to support a GISD student group. Why is this governed? This is governed through federal, state, and local requirements from the IRS to the state comptroller's office to local board policy. GISD 39 does require school districts to consider financial activities of all parent-teacher organizations, PTAs, booster clubs, foundations, and other fundraising entities for inclusion in the district's financial statements. Our district's financial statements are audited yearly and, as required, filed yearly. And so any group, those financial activities could be included into the district's financial statements. Also, as you can see here, CDC and CFC, legal and local, govern this, along with UIL, which we will discuss later in the training. If you're raising funds without being an approved booster club, then your group will be shut down because your group is not compliant with the above, not affiliated with GISD, and the criteria outlined in the booster club guidelines. This is to help protect everyone involved with our booster groups. It also provides that level of assurance with people who are giving money or donating money to a booster club or participating in those activities, it is a legit organization that is used to support GISD student activity group. Also, why do we have these training requirements? These are requests from our coaches and sponsors, parents, our boosters, and principals. Is to help prevent fraud and theft, avoid uncomfortable situations due to lack of knowledge. For example, with booster groups, there are yearly filings, even if no funds are raised, as required by the IRS and the state comptroller's office. Also provides transparency and resources for you as a booster member when questions arise through the course of the year or how funds are being expensed. But it just protects everybody through this process, including our sponsors. There's also yearly turnover in support organizations. So if you're the new president or treasurer, this helps you see how the practice has been done in the past. It helps validate the protocols have been followed and that all funds can be accounted for, and just to better educate everybody in their leadership role with the booster group. Also, we know as being involved in the booster club, you're asked to volunteer for these roles at times. You may not have sought this out. Somebody may have mentioned this to you. And so we want to help provide you some resources as you volunteer to serve in this role, just to help better educate you and also people who are involved with the booster club of what's required, because the IRS does look at entities as either being taxable or non-taxable. So we want to make sure you're set up the correct way. That way, when you're doing your yearly filings, paying a vendor, whatever that may be, that everything is done correctly, that protects you even 2-3 years from down the road when you're no longer the president or treasurer. Within this process, there are 3 types of years: a school year, a fiscal year, and calendar year. How this information is reported for booster groups. Through this, we'll have some questions that you can see, and at the very end, there will be a list of statements, a link to that, where you will put in your name, your role with the booster group, the actual booster group name, and then some statements, acknowledgement statements that you'll initial, verifying just some understanding of this. And then you'll submit that to the district along with the other required items that we will note at the end and on the district website. that helps validate your booster group to be operational for the 2020-21 school year. Estimates show that only blank of booster clubs have taken the steps to register and become tax-exempt organizations, thus giving them the ability to legally promote and to gain donor contributions with a tax benefit. Again, the IRS looks at entities as either being taxable or non-taxable. And so if a booster group is not a 501c3 as required by GISD, the IRS sees that entity as being taxable. So every dollar raised is then taxable. And so, our booster groups are required to be a 501c3 along with these other requirements that will be noted. And again, this is to help protect everybody through this process. The answers to C for this is you can look at and choose where you believe that may land. The correct answer is 12%. Next question. An estimated blank of booster clubs recently polled responded that they had not formally established any accounting policies and procedures. Those choices being, and that answer also being 90%. We do provide resources for you within our guidelines that you can take and use with your booster group so you don't have to create anything from scratch. It helps on those policies and procedures, provides that transparency, and again, protects you through this process. Club, you have to organize and function in a way that is consistent with the district's philosophy and objectives within the policies and also in accordance with UIL regulations. We'll briefly touch these UIL regulations in this process, and because this is also regulated beyond our even federal, state, and local requirements that we discuss in detail here. You'll work closely with the district, and it is a separate legal entity. What does that mean? That means because you're a separate legal entity, you do have yearly requirements to file with the IRS in the state of Texas through your own employer identification number. That is because the state has, or the district has its own employer identification number also. Our yearly financial reports are done with our number. The boosters have their number, and it's distinct to that booster group. The vision of each booster club is set by that director, sponsor, principal, or head coach and should reflect GISD's vision because that group has been approved and set up to operate to support that specific school student activity group. Again, this is regulated with policies GE and GKD, legal and local. The booster club is responsible for supporting a student group activity or program. Again, that is to help validate that the funds being raised are going back to that specific student group. Also, we'll discuss requirements on those funds and what they can and cannot be used for in some detail in this training. The booster clubs must always work collaboratively with the coach, sponsor, or principal and employee of the district, because it is a partnership. And as we noted earlier, although booster clubs are separate legal entities, it's not independent. Again, what does this mean? That means that the fundraisers, those activities need to be coordinated with that specific coach, sponsor, or principal. It also helps protect that the funds being raised for that intent can also be used for that intent when it is purchased for the district or donated to that student activity group when I say district. You must maintain bylaws and current officers updated with the principals and or sponsor, and the terms of those bylaws should be based on the fiscal year for the booster organization. You want to make sure you do have, or we recommend that you do have adequate insurance coverage for activities conducted on school premises. This protects the officers of that booster group because the district insurance does not cover the booster organization because it is a separate entity of the district and their reporting purposes. It provides transparency for booster members, even stakeholders who may ask questions about funds or how they've been expensed and where they're at, and it helps meet the federal state scenario. My booster club can hold a bingo night. True or false? That answer is false. Although our booster groups can do many fundraising activities, the district cannot because of the type of organization, which is why we also need our booster groups because they can raise funds in a way the district can't. But in regards to this, the Bingo Enabling Act imposes numerous restrictions on bingo operations. the Texas Lottery Commission is responsible for licensing and administrative enforcement of the BEA. And so as you can see here, the groups that are allowed to have a bingo night, school districts and booster groups are not one of those organizations. For a booster group, it has to be voluntary and provide unified support for student activity, meaning members can't be forced to be members, and there cannot be various criteria to be a voting member. If you're an active member, you have the same opportunity as other active members of the booster group. It encourages involvement by all students' parents. Need to obtain a 501c3 federal exempt status. Function in a way consistent with the district's guidelines, policies as applicable, and also you will want to make sure you're compliant with UIL regulations, because booster operations can impact a UIL activity, and so those guidelines are in place, and we'll discuss those more shortly. UIL guidelines for roles of booster clubs. There are regulations in place from UIL for athletic boosters, academic boosters, and music boosters. You can refer to these on the district website. After looking at the UIL website, the best point of contact for questions, you always want to start with that campus sponsor or coach, because if it's UIL regular activity, those coaches do get training on that from UIL and also receive those guidelines. The next best point of contact is that campus coordinator, whether that be the fine arts coordinator, CTE, or athletic coordinator for that campus, and then from there, the athletic department or fine arts department for the school district. Incorporating as a nonprofit. So each booster organization must register with the CFO office of the district. Again, we've highlighted GISD 39, which is noted here on this slide, and also the policies were noted prior. That is due to these requirements. The district is providing these supports and this training just to help make sure that our booster clubs, and also for you who are volunteering the role you're in, is protected as we go through this process through this school year, especially if you're new in this role. Those bylaws, the financial audit report, which we will also provide a resource for, GISD Booster Club checklist, which is also on our website and included in this presentation, and a confirmation statement are required to be submitted to the Business Services Division office each year. Booster clubs, again, required officers must be elected with 1 month from the formation date. We also highlight in the checklist how to organize a booster club, because that also must be approved, because we do not want conflicting booster clubs. We also help validate that there's enough members to sustain operations, and that it can also help account for funds that are being raised. Legally, funds cannot be raised without being an approved booster club. This helps prevent fraud to the district. Also provides transparency that when funds are being donated using a district or student activity name, that those people who are donating funds know those funds are going to what they're donating them for. Websites and social media. As a booster group, if you have a website, social media, Facebook page, it has to clearly state that it is that group. This is done to help if there's questions that arise, people know where to direct their questions. That's also done because booster groups are able to conduct fundraisers the school district legally cannot conduct. And so when those fundraisers are done, if someone were to come across that page, they would see that is not the school district doing that type of fundraiser. Also within on that site, a statement must be made that does directly note that it is a booster group, and that it is not, for example, Garland High School, or a teacher at Garland High School, as an example, because we want people to see that there is a difference between the booster group and the district, and the information being put out to the public. Bylaws are required. These provide the rules for how your organization operates. We provide samples of these bylaws within our guidelines too. You do not have to create these from scratch. These bylaws do describe how the booster group operates, the structure, the fiscal year, how officers are elected and officers are removed. Those bylaws are basically what has to be required by the booster group through the course of the fiscal year. Again, cannot use Garland ISD in the name, but be defined as a booster group, as we gave some examples on the prior slide. Whenever a booster group meets, the coach, sponsor, director, whoever must be invited to the meetings. Booster groups cannot operate in isolation. because it is a collaborative partnership between the booster group and the district, as we've covered in the earlier policies. We'll get more specific with the state of Texas information later in this presentation, but also in the IRS filings. That partnership must be in place. Any actions taken by the Booster Club board need to be recorded in the meeting minutes. Again, this helps solidify that the board did approve funds to be expensed, what was to be purchased, or how those funds were donated to that student activity group. It protects everyone in the process, not just this year, but even next year if questions were to arise. Make sure those actions are documented in the minutes and also subject to review by booster members. Key piece is, as a booster group, once approved, to obtain an employer identification number from the IRS. Even if you raise no funds, yearly filings are required by the IRS and the state of Texas. This gives you your 501c3 status for tax exempt purposes, because if you're a 501c3, you're able to purchase items that are tax exempt. Also, in raising of funds, as noted earlier, the IRS recognizes entities to be taxable or tax exempt. We require our booster groups to be tax exempt organizations, which is a 501c3. Sales tax with the Texas Comptroller. As you can see, any organization that's obtained a tax exempt status may purchase items tax-free. Also, booster groups that are selling items. The state of Texas, as you can see here, has 2 tax-free sale days per calendar year outside the tax-free weekend, which would give a booster group 3. Because the whole premise of this is that every dollar that is raised or revenue raised through items sold, the IRS and state of Texas require the funds through taxes to be reported and paid, just as a business would be. So we provide this training to help solidify what a booster group should do as they progress through the year. Again, all booster groups must apply for their own sales permit number. The district's sales permit number cannot be used because that is how the district reports its information to the state and IRS. The booster group would report using their own permit number. Tax-free items cannot be used for personal benefit. What does that mean? A booster group, if you're on a booster group and you need to buy a personal item, you cannot use that number to buy something for your house or business, because that is that number is for the booster group operations, not for personal use. We've already highlighted the tax-free sales days, and also, as you can see at the very bottom, must be filed with the state, even if 0 taxes are paid for that period. And the state of Texas, as we have seen in our experience, is not as lenient as the IRS. There is a $50 late fee, and the state, as we have also seen, does not waive that if deadlines are missed. Some other compliance items, as you can see here, we've already noted that it can't be used for a tax-free purchase for personal benefit. Items which become the personal property of individuals are not exempt from tax. So it's very critical on this compliance piece. There's a purchase side and a sales side. And so our whole goal is provide these resources so when you do operate as a booster group, you're meeting the requirements placed upon the district and you in raising those funds or buying items from the state of Texas and the IRS. Fundraising, and this is specifically from the IRS. Again, this is not a district preference or choice. The IRS stipulates this, which is why we provide this resource to our booster groups. The IRS does prevent individual accounts for a 501c3, meaning, and we'll talk about that meaning, but if there's individual accounts, the IRS can disqualify the tax exemption status of that 501c3, which would then not allow the booster club group to operate. There cannot be required participation in fundraising, and there cannot be required sales quotas. Activities must benefit the group as a whole and not necessarily just benefit individual members of the group. And here's where the IFA information comes in. So when funds are raised, every dollar raised is to benefit the entire group. It cannot go to benefit individuals or certain individuals in that group. The dollars raised go to benefit the entire group. It also cannot require a person to participate in fundraising. It can have a certain amount of criteria met for a member to receive a benefit. So meaning if they're an active member, they get equal benefits. If a group is raising funds and the group is not a 501c3, and again, this goes back to the IRS, every dollar raised is taxable. and the group will be shut down by the district. No longer be able to use the student activity name to raise funds or be involved with that student activity group of the campus. All fundraisers must be pre-approved by the principal, coach, or sponsor. Why is that? Because if you're out there raising funds, and an example would be you're raising funds to build a water park. Well, the district's not going to approve that. So we want to make sure what those funds are being raised for can actually be used for that intent. And that way people who are participating in that fundraiser know that the dollars that were given or donated or used to buy an item will go to support that student activity group in the manner it was raised. You want to have internal controls to secure money collected from fundraising. We do provide resources in our guidelines that we'll highlight later that you can adjust to fit the needs for your booster group. And those funds cannot go to pay for salaries, adult meals, personal groceries, loans, and many more. Again, those dollars raised must go to support that student activity group. Bank accounts, as we've noted, booster group will have their own employer identification number. They cannot use the district's EIN number. And again, that is due to the district uses that EIN number to report our expenditures and our revenues, our information with the banks. The booster group would have their own bank account. We recommend that at least 2 officers be signers on checks. And for booster clubs, district employees cannot serve as treasurer or signer on the bank accounts if there's a conflict of interest. For example, if I'm an administrator of the district or a head football coach, I can't be the treasurer or president of a booster club or involved with that financial activity because of the power of influence I may carry into both roles. You want to make sure those bank statements are reconciled monthly because with funds, even if there's no funds being raised or expensed, it allows to see with the bank statement that actually did not occur. It also allows that actions taken to expense funds. It provides that transparency of how they were expensed and to that penny of what was done. All collections for fees, dues, and fundraising must be deposited upon receipt. Again, this is to protect the people who are raising those funds, that money does not disappear or go missing by accident, and helps keep those internal controls in place. We do recommend a disbursement voucher with attached receipts. It should be completed for all expenditures regardless of the amount. And having those itemized, again, this protects you in your role 1, 2, 3 years down the road, even if somebody were to ask what happened to those funds. That itemized receipt provides that detail and tracks to the penny of what has been done. But that record keeping and having that available for audit purposes within the booster organization is vital. Controls, as a booster group, you want separation of duties. As we highlight these in detail with our guidelines, for example, separation of duties and even relationships, husband and wife team being the president and treasurer. You want to have checks and balances in place anytime there's funds being handled, in the disbursement of those funds, that it provides a safety for everyone involved when dollars are being utilized. Policies and procedures, you want to have those controls over approval of expenditures, and definitely bylaws. Financial review report and confirmation statement. Why is this done? It's to ensure all income and expenses are accounted for and consistent with budgets and goals for the year. And so as a new president or treasurer, the officers before you should have completed this. And this is what will be submitted, as we noted at the end, for this past fiscal year for your booster group. When you step down from your role next year and somebody else comes on, it allows them to see that everything is accounted for, and it's to protect the officers and the organization. So when is this done? The booster group will submit the audited financial report to the CFO by September 15th for this past year, and it will be September 15th, 2020. And then for the coming school year, those materials will be submitted by July 20 of 2021. We're moving that date up to provide support earlier in the summer. Who does this? You do not have to hire a CPA. We do say, though, that there needs to be a review committee on that booster group of at least 2 members who are not the president or treasurer. Again, this is to protect you, and that way these 2 members can see the statements, what's been done, and the activities of the financials, and that be signed off on for the next people coming into office. Booster clubs may not enter into any contracts on behalf of GISD. Again, GISD, if there's a contract with its name on it, we have more specified policies in place that are required to be met, and sometimes even required to be approved by the Board of Trustees. So contracts that are entered into with booster groups must have the booster organization's name on that contract, because if something were to occur, the terms of that contract are between the booster group and that vendor. Scenario: my booster club can charge a required fee that all students must pay, true or false? That answer is false. A booster club cannot require members or students to fundraise or raise a certain amount. For example, a student's ability to attend a trip cannot be based on raising a certain amount of money. It's an opportunity to generate revenue for that booster group as a group, not individuals. As we noted earlier, the IRS prevents individual fundraising accounts. So therefore, revenues raised shall be recorded in a group account, while all members or students have the same opportunity to benefit equally from revenues. If your club is using these individual accounts, please discontinue this practice immediately. And per the IRS, this can qualify the 501c3 status. And just a reminder, GISD employees are not allowed to serve in a capacity of a booster or parent organization if it conflicts with their role in the district. And again, for example, if I'm the head basketball coach at Rowlett High School, I cannot be the treasurer of the Rowlett Basketball Booster Club or the president. Reminders, the IRS does stipulate this, that a member who does not participate in a fundraiser would be entitled to the same benefits as those members who did participate. So for example, we cannot charge, or the booster group cannot charge, an amount of money to be a voting member. Active members get the same benefits as other active members. Booster groups may donate money or merchandise to the school with prior approval of the sponsor principal. Again, this is governed in the policies that were covered earlier in this presentation, and it is a violation of booster groups to give cash to GISD employees and or GISD students. Now, checklist. This is also on our website, but it's just a condensed version of the guidelines. That it's a step-by-step of what booster groups must do. Form a booster group with district approval must have a minimum of 8 members. This allows that sustainability, because oftentimes what we have seen, and not just here, in other districts, if a booster group forms with 2 members, there's not a way to sustain that booster group year after year. It also protects those revenues that have been raised to remain with that booster group year after year in that sustainability. And once the year starts, groups aren't allowed to form during the school year. That time would be now. Booster groups are not allowed to form at elementary and middle schools unless there's already an existing middle school booster club in operation. You'll need to complete the appropriate paperwork and submit to the district. Now we will get into the steps of this checklist. In the checklist, we do have the resources provided that can be completed. But step 1, you provide the district's appropriate sponsor principal with the list of booster club officers at the beginning of each school year and those officers that are in charge. Step 2, the booster club's official mailing address. School facilities may not be equipped to handle booster club email. That's also done to provide, since the booster group has a separate reporting entity to the IRS and the state comptroller's office, you want to have that official booster club mailing address, city, state, and zip code. And fundraisers. The booster club should consider purchasing a general liability policy, because the district's policy does not cover booster members or those officers. Neither the booster club nor officers are covered under GISD's liability insurance. And so again, if you're into a contract or something were to happen, that being a separate legal entity, the district's insurance does not cover booster groups. All fundraising activities shall be pre-approved by the principal. And number 5, since a booster group is a 501c3, as you can see here, funds raised must benefit the entire group. One member or student should not receive a larger benefit from fundraising than another. In addition, if a member or student chooses to not participate in the fundraiser, then that person still receives an equal benefit from revenues generated. Bank accounts used by the booster club include the bank name and account number. Again, no personal bank accounts, and district bank accounts cannot be used. And that bank account name and number must be tied to that booster club that is approved by the district and how it was submitted to the IRS. Determine the identification number used for the bank accounts. The booster's EIN should be used. Do not use individual social security numbers and do not use the district's EIN. Again, the IRS recognizes entities as being taxable or tax exempt. And so if you're using your social security number, that is a taxable, that is looked at as income per the IRS. And we do not allow our booster groups to use individual bank accounts to raise funds or track funds. They must be in the booster group's name. Make sure the update and authorize signers on your bank accounts as officers change. It's highly recommended, just to protect those funds that are raised, that all checks issued require 2 signatures, those being of the officers. Determine whether your organization is in good standing with the IRS by searching the following link. Again, if your booster group has been an active group and those yearly filings are taking place, the IRS on its website does list tax exempt organizations, and that can be validated. Again, as a district, as we approve these, we will list the approved booster groups on our website. And these are the groups that are allowed to operate in GISD. As noted, 501c3 groups are not automatically exempt from tax. You want to search to make sure you're in good standing with the Texas Comptroller's Office or apply for exemption with Texas Comptroller's Office. Number 11, file the booster club's Texas sales tax report, and that is required. The Texas Comptroller's Office determines how often the report needs to be filed, and this can also change, but that is a yearly requirement that must be done based on the time frame outlined by the Comptroller's Office. Make sure a treasury report is at every meeting. That includes the general membership, but that helps protect you as the treasurer, and we do provide that guidance and resource within our guidelines manual. That financial position is also critical because even if no funds are being expensed or raised, it does allow the members to see that the amount of money that was in the bank this month was also the same as last month, and it protects you as the treasurer as the year progresses. If applicable, issue the 1099 forms to individuals or businesses by January 31st of each year. This is an IRS requirement. Again, those 1099 forms, if funds are being expensed by that booster group, this is how all funds are tracked by the IRS. And so you want to make sure you have a W-9 from that individual or business if work is being done or a contract is being entered into. Number 15, as you can see, there are various forms that are required to be filed by the IRS and based off the dollar amount of funding. And so you can see down here what those are. But again, this is how the IRS determines that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, and the district validates that you're an approved organization by the IRS. Provide a copy of the financial report and confirmation statement to the coach, sponsor, principal, and the CFO. And again, this is not just something the district chooses to do. It is something that is required by GISD 39, as those financials might be included in the district's annual financial report. And so this is why these resources are provided and to support you in this process. Also determine whether your organization has obtained a Texas sales tax permit. Number 18, the Booster Club has received a tax exemption from the Texas Comptroller's Office. And again, make sure, if you have or have not, it determines the sales tax information and what you're able to do. If it's incorporated, determine whether the organization has obtained an exemption from the Texas franchise tax form from the Comptroller's Office. Federal regulation. Number 20, obtain an EIN number from the IRS. Cannot use the district's EIN number because our financials and information are reported through our own EIN number. Determine whether the Booster Club has received a tax-exempt status as a public 501c3 organization from the IRS. And again, our booster groups are required to be a 501c3 and registered with the IRS. Number 22, a copy of the bylaws, financial audit report, GISD Booster Club checklist, and confirmation statement are required to be submitted to the Business Services Division. And again, the district does have the authority to dissolve booster clubs who are not compliant and not operating under district policy guidelines. And again, just to highlight, booster groups who are not compliant with state, federal, or local requirements, the district does have the ability to dissolve that relationship with that booster group and dissolve that booster club. Follow-up. It's very important. Our booster club officers and the designated coach sponsor are both responsible for ensuring the guidelines are met. and also along with UIL, that is to protect those UIL program activities, and also with the state and federal regulations that are placed upon us in this working relationship. Again, regarding holding an officer position with a booster club or any school-related nonprofit entity, district employee in that supervisory role, whether that be an administrative role or a coach's role or a fine arts role specific to that organization, cannot hold an officer position in that booster club. So, for example, a football coach at the high school cannot hold an officer position for that football booster group. Another scenario: as a booster club, we are able to hold a charitable raffle. True or false? True. Under that act, only a qualified nonprofit organization may conduct raffles to benefit the campus and district group. The act does require the following: conduct that raffle. Again, this is outlined from the state of Texas. This is just not a recommendation, but a requirement. Two raffles are allowed per calendar year. And again, as we noted earlier, there are various types of year, from fiscal to tax year to calendar year. When a raffle is done under that act, there are 5 items that must be printed on each ticket. And as you can see those here. Also, cash prizes are strictly prohibited. Oversight and controls. Sponsors, meaning the school employees, cannot collect and deposit cash for booster groups, as then it becomes a district operation and the sponsor will be required to follow GISD cash management protocols. So that is the separation in roles. Expenditures must occur in a manner that's consistent with the boosters' bylaws. As the treasurer, if you're that person, providing that financial report at each meeting, even if no funds are being raised or expensed. This just allows the group to see that the money is still there and the accounts reflect what was shown in the prior month. Debit credit cards should not be used because that disbursement of funds is greatly weakened. This just protects those officers and how those funds are expensed and can be accounted for when they are dispersed through an expense at that point in time. Properly set up booster club. You need to follow the provided checklist, which is available on the website to assist in guidance. Items that need to be provided to the business office in Garland ISD are the bylaws, the financial audit report for this past year, 1920, the GISD Booster Club checklist, because that's what you go through to validate everything has been done. That confirmation statement, which is the audit of those financials and the information on the officers, and then complete the electronic acknowledgement of information for validation of this training. There's a link on the website right below this training that you will click on. You'll input your name, your role with the booster group, the name of your booster group and campus, and there's going to be some validation statements in regards to the understanding of the booster group and the requirements that are placed upon a booster group from the federal, state, and local requirements. Failure to complete this training, failure to submit the required documents will result in that booster group being dissolved in October 2020. So, no funds can be raised, no operations, no expenses, because with Garland ISD being such a large district, we do want to appropriately vet each booster club and be able to validate for people that are involved that is an actual booster club affiliated with Garland ISD. You, and we know time is very valuable, and you're doing this role willingly. And any questions or comments, please submit your questions in the Google form in that link provided below this presentation. We do already have an FAQ sheet that is out there that may answer some of your questions. If we do not, and we will add your questions to that FAQ and load it to that website. Also, you may email questions to boosterclub@garlandisd.net. And a lot of guidance can be found in the Garland ISD Booster Club manual and on the Booster Club checklist. We try to condense much information into that checklist to just outline step by step what must be done. But we do appreciate you, and we look forward to another great school year. Thank you.